Hello, and welcome to the Vandal Factory podcast. I didn't say radio show because it's a podcast. Don't get cross with me, Henry. My name's Natalie Quatermass.
I'm Henry Raby.
And together we are
Vandal Factory.
Yes, that's right, folks. This is a podcast where Henry and I talk all things arts and activism. And oh boy, have we got an excellent episode in store for you today.
We've got a lovely interview with Billy and Lou, who are from the Hangout, who is a LGBTQ youth space, and they're going to talk about this film they've created called Beyond Ls14.
We have a beautiful contribution to the Freelance Feelings Factory, where a freelancer, in this case a lighting designer and emerging artist from Hull, gets to talk about their experience of being a freelancer.
Hey, Natalie, do you like punk music?
Occasionally.
We've got an
interview. In this case, very much so.
100%. We've got an interview with Emilia from the Menstrual Cramps, Bristol-based queer punk scamps.
So good. And also, of course, we have our regular features, such as Henry doing his own thing, because he's an only child and he likes to do his own thing.
It's a poem.
And also, I've got a provocation for you. I'm going to tell you about some of the ideas that I've been thinking lots about recently, and we cannot wait. But before we get going with all of that lovely stuff, here at the Vandal Factory Show, we like to talk about hope and anger, because they are the two fuels that keep our artist, activist fires burning. So, Henry, how's your hope and how's your anger?
Well, you can't help but feel a little tiny singe, a little ember, little tiny flicker of hope, because the Tories are out! Hey!
Fuckers! They've gone! They've gone!
We are vastly impartial on the Vandal Factory podcast.
Monkeys.
After 14 years of austerity and the hostile environment and toxic nationalism and crunching down on the poor, the Tory government has finally collapsed after incompetent failure and a litany of absolute naffheads have lost their seats. Yes.
And they didn't just lose the election. The election was lost by them.
Yeah.
Like, that will be the defining thing. Like, Labour didn't win. It was, which I know that has its whole thing. Wouldn't it be nice if, like, we actually had a socialist government?
Wouldn't it be nice if there was something that people believed in,
yes,
rather than didn't like the other
exactly.
team? So people were like, I just don't want these guys to win again.
Yeah, but at the same time, they have been humiliated, and that feels good.
Yeah.
Although, like, even, I talked about on the last, everyone should go and listen to our general election special, which is the last episode we released. And even if you're kind of sick of general election talk, that episode was this really awesome collection of ideas and a manifesto from a huge range of people, lots of people who'd already been on the Vandal Factory podcast, and them going, what would be your manifesto and your ideas? So I think it's going to act as a really good anchor and sort of bookmark to say, well, let's go back to that episode and see which of these ideas are coming up in policy, because I think a few of them will, right?
There's definitely. We'll talk about some stuff around freelancers and the New Deal in a bit. But I mean, the last thing I just want to say about this Conservative tragic government is that they had 14 years and 12 culture secretaries. So it was just a football that got tossed around and kicked, and you can be the culture
14.
You can be the culture minister for a bit. Go on, like 12 different people in this job, because it was just a thing to do while you clambered up the hierarchical ladder to get a better cabinet position, and shows how ruthlessly uncaring they were about arts and culture, and within that bracket is museums and libraries and sport. So
absolutely.
but I'm hoping that. Well, so Lisa Nandy is the new culture minister, I just want to read out a bit of a speech she gave to her department, to a new department, right? Because the Conservatives have constantly been critical of progressive policies and change and arts, and especially
created
Nadine
the
Dorries.
culture wars for their own gain.
She said the era of culture wars is over, right? Hooray, celebrations all round. Governments don't make this country what we are, people do, and whether that's through investing in grassroots sports, a visible symbol of what our young people mean to us in every community, or enabling brilliant working class kids to succeed in drama, dance or journalism, their raw talent is so obvious, but for too many of whom geography is destiny, we will be a government that walks alongside them as they create that country I've believed in all my life but never quite yet seen. Which is quite
here we go,
inspiring
we can't
stuff to talk about working class communities, to talk about drama and dance and journalism as essential parts of making a country strong. At the moment, the government have spent 0.4% of its expenditure on the arts, which is less than Berlin spends on its population, right?
Wow.
So when we talk about being this bastion of British film and theatre and culture and literature and music, are we the country that created the Beatles? We don't fund it or invest in it or celebrate it. So yeah, there's my little tinge of hope. But don't let your guard down, Natalie.
No way. Absolutely.
No guards getting. Do not think that this podcast is a cheerleading a Labour government, because they have promised no extra funding to the arts at the moment. They've said there will be a review of the Arts Council, a promise of a new deal for working people, which is to champion the self-employed, to extend health and safety, to have blacklisting protections and whistle guarding safeguards. So great, that's good. That relationship to trade unions and workers' rights is there, but there's no promise of rolling back hostile environments, anti-protest laws, anti-privatisation, still the academisation of schools. The Rwanda scheme is scrapped. Hooray! But they're just going to invest in more border patrols and border police. So let's keep alert and keep fighting for a better world beyond this briefcase Labour that we have been promised.
I'm seeing it as a breather. I think you can take a little bit of a breather in that, rather than just watching things get worse and worse and worse and worse. Hopefully some things will not get worse, for a while, for a little bit. If we could just not watch oh my God, what horrific idea could they come up with next? And just be re-traumatized every week with being things are just getting harder and harder and harder. That's take the minute to kind of reset and then use that to just keep doing exactly what we're doing. Rebuild it, keep your eye on the prize of what you want your world to look like and keep building it. No, not going to stop protesting, not going to stop championing what we want to see and making the world that we want to live in.
In that spirit of trying to build spaces and build a future and invest in a different way of thinking, we're going to have our first interview of the podcast episode. This is with Lou and Billy, who are part of the Hangout, which is a LGBTQ youth group that exists here in Seacroft, where me and Natalie live and are based on the old podcast. The first thing you're going to hear is some voices of the young people, and then we're going to hear from Billy and Lou about how they're trying to build an ambitious, caring, nurturing space.
Well, the Hangout to me is a place where I can be myself and hang out with my friends, and it's great. We have a lot of discussions around deep topics and important topics that many other people wouldn't usually have. The Hangout has changed my confidence because I feel more comfortable being myself around people I don't know. I think that trans rights are important. I agree with Callan. I think they're just basic human rights. I don't really see how trans people could be any different to cisgender people or straight people, because at the end of the day, I think we're just all human and we all deserve the same respect. I think it's important, especially for closeted people who can't really share their identity with anyone else. You can just be who you are here. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. My name is Lou Howell. I'm currently one of the directors at The Hangout. The Hangout is an inclusive youth charity that currently works in Seacroft. We meet every Tuesday, 5:30 to 6:30, and I run the session.
Hi, I'm Billy. I am a volunteer for The Hangout, recently come on board, and very excited about the summer of activities that we've got coming up, including lots of Pride events this summer. I feel really passionately about especially young trans people having spaces to be creative. I think at this current moment, specifically in the UK, trans young people are under attack from the government in terms of their healthcare, in terms of social rights, all of it. And I think cultivating that creativity and that softness and that play is something that is so often missing from activist spaces, where a lot of it can be very serious and very hard. And I think that having art as a vehicle to bring hope alongside the hard bits is what I feel very passionately about.
If I can ask you folks, like, was youth spaces important to you growing up? So I just use my own experience. An example is I was a member of youth theatre, and that was a space where I went to where I could be strange little Henry in the corner and not reinvent myself, but certainly be a bit more free. So yeah, was that important to you and your journey into youth participation work?
I grew up in North Leeds in Moralton, and till to this day there is a very big lack of youth services in that area. We went to Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's was our community centre, and I really valued the young people in my community, and I think that I found a lot of solace in growing up in a very mixed, diverse community. But I really wish I could have accessed somewhere like a community centre. And similarly had a background of theatre. We were the theatre kids who were the sort of strange kids on the fringe who would sit in the drama hall at lunch. And in my youth work, I think I'm always trying to channel that weirdness and that energy of bringing young people who feel on the fringes and feel isolation into a space where they're celebrated, and into a space where their liberation is like at the forefront of the work, which I think programmes like Youth Theatre do. But in the context of the Hangout, LGBTQ specific provision is so important because there's a climate of rejection for a lot of young queer and trans people, rejection from youth spaces, from community centres, from schools, from art institutions. And I think art is at the heart of what we do so that they can have that access.
Well, I'll ask you about Beyond Ls14 and what that project was.
So Beyond Ls14 was and is a short film curated by us but programmed by the Seacroft councillors. So it was funded by the local council to create a project that explores LGBTQ experiences in the area, and specifically in Kentmere. So the young people engage with filmmaker, and we made a short film. It is quite silly, it's quite fun. We dressed in costumes, we danced around the big community centre hall, just to kind of showcase what is in Seacroft and what's here for young LGBT people.
Can you give us a bit of context of Seacroft? It's a place where I live, but I didn't grow up here, and why it's important to tell Seacroft stories through these young people telling about the world they live in.
So currently in Ls14, there is a lot of things like housing insecurity and food poverty. Quite a lot of people who live in the Kentmere housing estate experience a food desert. It's quite hard to access food. There is a massive Tesco down the road, but if you don't live near it, it's just really hard to access. So I think in Seacroft there is a climate of the local authorities abandoning people through austerity, and then you have amazing community support that comes as a response from that. So in Kentmere and in Ls14 Trust, they do such an amazing job of looking after young people and young people who are at the heart of these issues, and providing them with spaces where they sit outside of that and they get to be creative and they get to be supported and learn life skills. And I'm not from Seacroft, I'm from Moralton, but I see so much similarities between the housing estate I grew up on and this housing estate. I grew up on Cramler Bank Estate, and I see myself in the young people that I work with so strongly, because they all have such an incredible spirit and they're all incredibly resilient and also incredibly funny about things that are actually like deeply distressing. Like austerity is a deeply distressing, isolating thing to live under. But I really see when they come together as young people that they form resilience together. And I think that's a really beautiful thing about Seacroft.
And the film Beyond Ls14 celebrates that.
Yeah, it mostly celebrates, I think, the story of the Hangout and the kids that are in the Hangout and their friendships and why they come to the session and also what the session represents for them. So I think a lot of them are really passionate about trans rights and they really value the chance to speak about that. So the film was kind of a vehicle to kind of send that message out while also focusing on the local wider community as well.
I just have one last couple of quick questions. One was, when we spoke many months ago setting this up, you talked about people assuming, maybe even within the LGBTQ community, why would you want to do something in Seacroft? Why would you go there? Correct me if I'm wrong, you can't say that's the case, but with a hint of going, people in working class communities aren't gay, queer, lesbian, that they're not trans, that's it, and it's perceived as maybe a bit of a middle class thing. I wonder if you just reflect on that and why that's BS, I suppose. I mean, it is, but...
Yeah, the response I've had, queer people my own age who live in very middle class areas of Leeds, like in North Leeds, be really shocked about Kentmere and have the response that's like, why would you do it there? And it's like, exactly why. That's exactly why. The fact you have to ask me that is why we're here. I think it's so important, it's so crucial to remember that in the fight for trans liberation, working class people have always been there. And I think that I grew up in a very, very working class home, in a very working class environment with a non-binary parent. And I think it's taught me so much about my life and about valuing people beyond what the expectation of the binary is. And that I think there is a lesson to be learned for queer middle class people in Leeds who don't include working class trans kids in their activism. And I think in a way the Hangout has kind of been a call to action for people to start thinking about that and to integrate that into their politics and into their imagining of trans kids. And yeah, it's total bollocks. There's trans kids of colour, there's disabled trans kids, there's trans kids from all sorts of life experiences, there's queer kids of all sorts of life experiences, and they're our comrades. You know, they think really critically and they think amazingly. And in our sessions, we have great discussions on politics. And it's so important for me that they have their voices heard.
Billy, anything you wanted to say?
I have nothing to add. That was beautiful.
To the barricades! Where can people, do they need to get in touch with you to watch the film if you want it shared and screened?
Hopefully this will be screened at the next year Leeds Queer Film Festival, which will happen next March. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for Northern Queer Film Festivals to watch Beyond Ls14. And to support the Hangout, we currently have a live fundraiser which supports our Pride provision. So that's taking young people to Pride events across Leeds and places like Hebden Bridge. It'll help us with transport and access needs. So you can find that in the links. I don't know.
Links down there, folks. Yeah.
Plug the Hangout Instagram. Plug the Hangout Instagram.
You can do that. I don't know.
What's the Hangout Instagram?
What is the handle? Is it just the Hangout Leeds? Okay. You can find details of the fundraiser and all of the great events we're doing this summer at the Hangout Leeds on Instagram.
Nice one. My very last question, and I feel like if I'd asked the group of 6, I wouldn't have got 6 different responses, I would have got 6 million different responses. But at the end of interviews, we like to play a song that is maybe connected to the work you're doing or the group. Is there something that you think that's the song that makes you think of the Hangout or reflects these young people? Or something, just for you, Lou, that you want people to hear?
Lemonade by Sophie. My best friend showed me Sophie when I was 18 at university, and I remember it blowing my brain. And I walked into a Hangout session one day and a young person just said to me, "Will you play Lemonade by Sophie?" And I literally burst into tears. I was like, I saw all my friends and them as young people, and I was like, we're all connected through Sophie. And I was, my mind was blown.
Lemonade, lemonade. 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 Lemonade, I got something to tell you. Hope you'll understand. I never meant to hurt you. Wasn't in my plans. It's just that when I'm with you, everything's okay. I get that fizzy feeling, and I want lemonade. Lemonade, lemonade. Lemonade, lemonade. Lemonade, lemonade. Lemonade, lemonade. Candy boys, cup, candy boys. Candy boys, cup, candy boys. Candy boys, cup, candy boys. Lemonade, lemonade. Candy boys, cup, candy boys. Lemonade, lemonade. Candy boys, cup, candy boys. Candy boys, cup, candy boys. Lemonade, lemonade. Candy boys, cup, candy boys. I got something to tell you. Hope you'll understand. I never meant to hurt you. Wasn't in my plans. It's just that when I'm with you, everything's okay. I get that fizzy feeling, and I want lemonade.
The chat train is pulling into Nat's provocation station.
Yes, that's right. Hello. It's the time of the show where I get to take the mic and talk a little bit about any of the ideas or the practice that I've been involved with recently. And if you listen to the last general election special episode, you'll know that I've been in a study lockdown for the last few weeks. I've had a lot of back-to-back projects and then a big end of my third year review for the PhD that I'm doing at York St John's University. And for that, I had to do a piece of writing, and I did a lit review on something called place-based practice, which is, as you might know, practice or like working with people in lots of different ways. It could be through the arts, it could be through exploration of nature, it could be anything really, in a specific place. So I thought, Henry, for this provocation, I'd talk you through a couple of like the heady concepts that I had to talk about or write about in my essay, and I'll throw them to you and see what you think about them.
I'm ready to catch them.
Are you ready? So the world of place is like a huge field of literature, and you can't really dip into it without talking about space.
Okay. But place and space, aren't they just synonyms?
Yeah, no, they're different. And particularly with space, I'll touch upon Foucault. Did you ever have to do Foucault at your degree? It comes up a lot, right?
I know of Michael Michel.
Yeah.
Foucault. The only reason I know about him is, well, because he's a famous academic and philosopher, but also there's a punk song that references him as their favourite skinhead.
That's great. I should be playing that as banger of the hour. But no, anyway, one of the terms that he coined was heterotopias. Now, don't panic.
Heterotopias?
It's not what you're thinking, because I know we want queertopias. But this phrase means worlds within worlds, which are somehow disruptive or unsettle what lies outside of them. So these are spaces that have their own cultures or etiquettes and ways of being, and once entered into, create a shift from wider societal norms. So this could be, Foucault gives examples like ships or Turkish baths is one of the
Okay.
one of
Hello.
the. I was like, oh, okay, I don't understand. Yeah, that seems out of place there. But it could be prisons or gardens of iniquity. That's the this philosopher in when's Foucault writing? Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna get shouted at for not knowing. But that's the examples they give. But what does that concept resonate with you? Can you think of any heterotopias?
I guess the obvious one is we've just heard about youth spaces, about youth theatre, about art spaces where people are invited in to be playful and creative in ways that they're not allowed to be or invited to be outside in day-to-day life. I've just worked on a project with an artist who's shout out Izzy Britton, and she's just done an amazing project working on poetry with people on an estate in Dewsbury, and to allow people the space to be writers, to tell their story in this 90 minutes is transformative in a small way. I'm not saying it's world changing, but it can change people's lives.
But you create your own, for a moment, you create your own space. And another example would be the Seacroft Forest Garden. So a patch of land that's been taken over by local people, and so they've cleared it out. It's just a dumping ground and created an environmental space for nature to thrive in, planted dozens and dozens of trees on the principles of permaculture. The design of the space is, this is what the whole world should look like, but also the idea that you go and you grow your own food and you work and can take food home, and there's a space that just serves the community. So the rules in that space are different from us going and working for the man and in order to buy our food from the supermarket that's also serving the man, etc.
So does it count if this space is temporary? So my examples are that a community centre for a brief time becomes a space of a different kind of creativity and different way of working, and then the higher ends and the artists leave, and then another group come in. Whereas your example is this is a permanent place. This is somewhere that has a boundary. This is called the Seacroft Garden. You're entering. It remains the Seacroft Garden. Even when nobody's there, and hopefully it will long remain the Seacroft Community Garden.
Well, that's probably one of the key differences between a space and a place.
Oh!
So place is more permanent. Although the activity and what creates that space, the relationships, the activity that's happening is the space, what creates it, but the place is more consistent. I'm sort of riffing that. People might... I can always hear my supervisors in my ears. Another one of these key concepts I'll chuck at you, Cynefin, which is spelled Cynefin. So I thought it was Sinn Féin as a Welsh word, but I'm told, I've looked it up, it's Cynefin, and that means sense of place. So again, it's a Welsh word that could mean habitat, to haunt, to be acquainted, familiar, and it could be sort of used in a tribal, religious and geographical way, or it's often compared to the Maori word of, I hope I'm definitely saying this one wrong, Tarangewewe, meaning place to stand, or the ground and place, which is your heritage. And so a connection to the ground being... the sense of place, the Cynefin. What does that bring to mind for you?
I keep thinking about, in my experience of art spaces and punk gigs and punk culture and subculture, for me, it's how do you use a space in an alternative way to the standard way. So what I mean by that is going... people come, people go, they pay money or they experience a thing and they go. How is that space affecting the world around it, is transforming people, is challenging capitalist hierarchies and structures and heteronormative ways of being, rather than just, this is my private business that people come and book and leave. I've just read... But
I guess this just to... I know you were just saying, where your head was at, sure. But this would be Cynefin would be that sense, like, what's the heritage? What's the ground? So you might be using, if there's a gig space that has a legacy to it of being rebellious and changing the world, or maybe a space that's been you've had to fight for that space to exist in. Our friend Joe, who was involved in the campaign to save, it was like one of the first gay pubs in London, the Black Cat, was it? And there's a huge campaign to save that space as being like, this is our heritage. This is part of the gay and queer community's history, and you can't just develop that. This means something, this place. This is where I stand. But more traditionally, you might go to, what was your man who was on the podcast on the album?
So Johnny Campbell created an album of folk songs where he would record them live atop hills, the highest points in different northern counties, recording this music out in nature with the world, with the wind, with the birds, while he was playing folk songs.
And all the folk song connected to the history of that place and had come from that place. So there you go, having a sense of like where you come from and your ancestors before you.
It reminds me that, so I'm originally from York, which is obviously a very historical place that in the last few years has deindustrialized and really centered tourism, and because of that it's really bigged up its history of Vikings and Romans and to an extent
not
Victorians.
The history of its industrial history.
No, and a decade ago now, there was a group called York Alternative History that set up to tell the different stories, the working class stories, the LGBTQ stories of this place.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've got a book of it of like the different parts of York that remain sort of hidden and unknown.
And also recognising that communities are not monoliths, right? So people can have completely different experiences of a place. And I was looking at one researcher, Karen Till, who did a study in South Africa, who was looking at memory studies in post-apartheid South Africa. So you can have vastly different experiences of one place, and she was doing place-based practice based on stories and memory, and calling for memory studies to be sensitive to the different ways that individuals and groups can understand their pasts and their possible futures through the relationships and they have with others and this place. So that it's a really interesting anchor to look at exactly that, like where you've come from, honouring your history, and then where do we go next, and how do we build those the space we want to be. But absolutely, like it also is always worth mentioning that places can be exclusionary, and it's not just oh great, we get to make the communities we get to make the worlds we want to work. That's not an easy fix. You constantly, as a practitioner of place, have to be re-examining of the values that you're building upon and negotiating different people's relationships with that place. Do you remember the phrase somewhere and anywhere, that sort of the somewheres and the anywheres that came up around sort of post-Brexit time?
And so this idea that some people see the world as they are rooted in a specific place or time or culture, and some people who see themselves much more flexible and broad and looking in many different directions, the some places and the any places.
Yeah.
And that was about going, well, Theresa May's response of going, if you see yourself as a citizen of the world, you're actually a citizen of nowhere. So you have to be rooted somewhere. You have to make a choice, which is very binary and border-led.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this guy, David Goodhart, wrote a really interesting book, The Road to Somewhere, The Populist Revolt. So he was arguing that the biggest divide in the UK wasn't any longer about upper class and working class or the left and the right. It was about the somewheres and the anywheres. And he talks about somewheres. If you're a somewheres, you are often rooted to a place. You value group attachments, familiarity and security. Not that you don't value other things, but they're going to be like your top drivers in your life. And then there's anywheres that tend to be more mobile, value autonomy, openness, fluidity. And these different relationships to place raise interesting questions for practitioners, place-based practitioners. Such as, they can be exclusionary, and especially for those who don't fit the dominant hegemony. And the experience of the dominant hegemony is also subjective. So, that taking people who feel their lifestyle is being threatened when it doesn't fit the facts. I'm thinking about people who go, this country is being overthrown by immigrants. They feel as if their place is changing, and it is, and that, their sense of self and their sense of their place is being threatened, and so they're responding to that or reacting to it in a negative way. So there can be attachments to places aren't necessarily always like a positive, great thing. But I also think it's the reason I'm spending so much time thinking about it is because it really comes back to the classic thing of like act local, think global in environmental circles, and the stuff that we always talk about of like going out and living and being and manifesting the world that you want to create. Yeah. So you do that in your life, and then that's if enough people start doing that, then we start creating this world and we start making connections on a really local level, and then it is happening globally as well. So I've got this image in my head of like little sparks firing off of like, all these different people are kind of living in this way where we don't want to be controlled by binaries or hierarchical structures, and we want to, we
want to look at ways collectively. We want to look at ways where we respect
and we can
nature
go,
and
look at that place over there. They're doing it too. Yeah, we're doing it too. And all the connections are forming all over the world, and that's how we make our utopia.
Lovely. I can't wait for that.
End.
It's going to be great. Can't wait for that utopia. Where's my utopia?
That's an album that we're not going to play because you called it dad music. Anyway, that was my provocation. I enjoyed that chat.
That was a great chat. Thank you for bringing that, Natalie. As always, if you've got something to contribute to the Vandal Factory podcast and you want to join in these chats, you want to call us out because we've said something you heartily disagree with, or actually go in, here's all the things that you're totally bang on with, vandalfactorytheatre@gmail.com. Speaking of which, you can also get in touch if you want to contribute to the Freelance Feelings Factory.
Freelance Feeling Factory. Ooh, yeah.
Hello, I'm Jess Brigham and I'm a lighting designer from Hull. I was talking to a director recently about how to move from small scale to mid scale. They replied with, well, as we all know, there's only one way. You've got to move to London. Are you willing to do that? As a working class emerging artist, that just isn't an option for me. I work enough to live, which I'm grateful for, as I get to do what I love and develop my skill set as I go, but the £200 I pay for rent in a shared house in Hull wouldn't get me very far in London. By telling people that this is the only way they can make it, we're discouraging working class artists from being in the arts. And the trouble is that those who want it so badly that they'll make the move whether they have the finances for it or not are skinting themselves. Now, I think that if it's affordable for you, then that's a choice you can make for yourself, but it isn't essential. I work in London and the North and travel from Hull, and weigh up projects that are further away based on whether they can cover travel and accommodation. I know it's not easy regardless. It's pretty tricky to live off an emerging artist's wage because a lot of us start with projects that are offering pretty low pay, if any pay at all. And I wonder if we stop encouraging all of our local artists to move to London, maybe the opportunities would become more and more local, which might be a little bit optimistic of me, but I'm not sure.
Thank you very much, Jess, for sending in that contribution. Me and Natalie were talking before when we listened to it about options and that sort of cultural capital, social capital of that ability to go, well, I'd quite like to live here or there, and those limitations of what's placed both economically of what you can afford, but also some people are so rooted in, I certainly feel very rooted in home and Yorkshire and York and Leeds, and feeling in a bit of a limbo space at the moment of like, where do I want to be? And those are questions that we ask ourselves as in our career as artists, as placemakers, as community artists. And yeah, thank you for that provocation that's got me a thinking.
Yeah, I do love it when a theme accidentally arises. So me and Henry often don't talk about like what he's doing for a poem or what I'm doing for a provocation, or what we all collect different bits and then we put it all together just before we start recording. And this amazing sort of theme has arrived that I was also, I promise that wasn't planned, that the provocation would be talking about your ability to move and connections to a place, and then the Freelance Feelings Factory was also about that. So it was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Do get in touch with us if you want to contribute. It doesn't have to be like the negative things you've been feeling. It can be the positive things. It could be a project you're working on or something you're really proud of.
Just want to hear from freelancers.
But do you want to hear from me?
I suppose so.
Jingle, 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 jingle.
Wait, Henry, you said something interesting before. For the first time ever.
Whoa!
Oh my goodness.
He's doing his own thing!
Yes, folks, it's time for me to do my own thing, which is generally, usually, mostly, always doing a poem. This is a work in progress piece because the best way for me to work on something is to throw it out into the world and test it in the public sphere. So thank you for joining me on this little adventure. It's really influenced by some books I've been reading at the moment.
Come on, show me all your books you've been reading.
So the first one is Reworlding Ramallah, which is short science fiction stories from Palestine, which is a collection that came out of some workshops that were led in the West Bank. And it's this idea, reworlding is creating new worlds. Science fiction is this perfect medium, this perfect vehicle for discovering and exploring new ideas of how we can engage with the universe around us and imagine another way. So it's this beautiful book.
It's got like spray painted red and green along the pages at the edge.
Yeah, and if you flip it the other way, it's in Arabic.
Wow.
Which is completely useless to me, but some
nice to know though.
Nice to know. I actually had to buy it from a shop in Belgium. Because I couldn't find it. It's available, but, it's a bit of a rarity. It's a Palestinian publisher, Onomatopoeia, published in 2019 in collaboration with Disarming Design from Palestine.
Shout out to that.
Other book I've been reading, I want to shout out, is called Smash the System! It's punk anarchism as a culture of resistance, and it's essays from all around the world, from East Asia to Europe to South America, about anarchism and punk and where that crosses over, and how that has been a fight for liberation and freedom, which has been fascinating read.
Beautiful artwork on the front of that.
And it's only £7 from Active Distribution.
And is that the one you said there's a different like each chapter is a different country?
Yeah.
A different story of how someone smashed the system. Wow,
it's great.
That sounds so cool.
And the last one is a very recent book that's come out by Toby Manning, which is called Mixing Pop and Politics, which is a Marxist analysis of the history of popular music, if you're interested in. And I reference I'd never heard this term Fordism before, right? Which is this idea that before Henry Ford came along with his mass producing, there was much more of this idea of a rich class in their mansions and an impoverished class that were on poverty wages. And he created a model that was a bit more
middle class.
We want these workers to buy our products, so we're going to encourage them to want money, and we want them to be well off so that they buy money and enter this capitalist system. So what does that mean for popular music? So if you're interested in that, there you go.
So you've taken all these massive ideas and distilled it into something that I'm hoping it rhymes.
It's got a bit of rhyming. Don't worry, mate. Okay.
Incredible.
Well, we'll give it a
I'm looking forward to it.
It's called The Gig at the End of the World.
Oh, nice.
In these end of days, I've seen you down the Pally demos boasting a Black Lodge press bag. I have no confidence to talk to you, so I sent you a few memes on Instagram chat. I tried out my chat up line, do you want to listen to my protest playlist, Vive la Resistance, but how could you resist? Instead you said, well, how about a proper gig at a venue where the floor sticks like it's a trap? I thought, oh, snap. So we paid the entrance fee, which was cheaper with a flyer, and the band sung like there was no tomorrow, with 6 strings and friendly chords, plus lyrics that widen the walls, and stickers making truth sound sharper. Outside, the world got smaller, started getting stripped away. Noise complaints turned to nothingness like COVID steals taste, and the universe silenced into a void with nothing left to say, just censor. So we were at the last ever gig in the world. As reality faded to black, we applauded the first act. To sound smart, I asked, well, who's this Fordism for? Because nothing comes for free. Are we mass-producing Monday to Friday just to come here dancing by? You've got some nerve, the anarcho-punk spat from behind the merch stall. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Wheelbarrow wall of deaths and flinging shoulders. I've watched C chords clatter in the dark at a house show. Footprints on the ceiling from crowd surfing. All those moments will be lost to time, like music on extinct MySpace pages. And I dance out of time, and you dance like you're running out of time, because one day it will be the last time that band ever plays that song. And outside time skips a beat. And in this little utopia, we're here with every weirdo in attendance or watching the stream at home, on this raft of drums and guitars, as the void snuffs out the lonely stars. Walt Jabs goes skanking by the bar, and Milo's back from college. Eileen wants to pull an all-nighter. For the chorus, we raise lucky purple lighters. The best ofs playing between bands. And the bands, well, the hearts played out. I expect nothing less. DJs deciding fates. The amps catching fire like mini beacons. The set lists are runic, and the last PA on its last legs loses consciousness. The lead singer has lost their voice. The last plectrum in existence pings off into the shadows. Wait. Those aren't shadows. That's the void. Stage lights switch off. And it ends then. Because the last ever gig at the end of existence has a curfew of 11 p.m. And tomorrow morning, with the world ended, we hold hands and hum as we build a new one.
Way! Brilliant stuff, mate.
Thank you.
That's some really, really strong stuff in there. I enjoyed. I like the opening of you trying to flirt with someone. That's a really nice. I did zone out towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I liked footprints on the ceiling and lyrics that expanded the walls. I loved all that imagery. That's brilliant.
The footprints on the ceiling comes from Ashbury Castle, which was, I think it was just people's home in London where they used to put on loads of cool house shows, and the landlord was like, what's all these marks on the ceiling? And they were footprints from people crowd surfing.
Oh, wow.
Well, it needs a bit of work, but thank you for listening to it.
It's going to be a banger. Yeah. It's absolutely going to be a banger. But now I'm there. The whole way through, I was just imagining the spaces that we were in when we were at Manchester Punk Festival, which, if you haven't listened to our live Manchester Punk Festival episode, go back a few episodes and listen to that. And I think that's a perfect time for our next interview.
Yeah, so we caught up with Emilia from the Menstrual Cramps, who are a really rad, awesome, cool, shouty, bratty punk band from Bristol. So here we go.
I resent you working from home with a garden log on just to moan. I know it's wrong, we've all got our struggles. My work is stress with no support.
And I feel like I have to say, I'm suffering menstrual cramps for the last 2 days. Do you get like
Me
a
too.
lot of people just tell you that? Like,
yeah, and I love it.
The band.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I'm also suffering menstrual cramps.
Great.
My mate at work also had menstrual cramps.
There we go.
There we go.
We're taking over.
Yeah. Well, go on, let's use that as a starting point then. So for anyone who doesn't know, how did Menstrual Cramps come about as a name, but as a band in general?
I think we started in like 2017. And we're just an accidental band, basically. Like I was living, yeah. I was living with some friends at the time, and I was like, we were all getting kicked out of our like shared house, and like I was unemployed, just lost my job. And I was like writing angsty poetry at the time. And then my housemate at the time was like, oh, let's just record it into a song on this acoustic guitar and we'll just distort it on Logic Pro. And I was like, yeah, cool, let's do that. And then we just made some songs and like just kept uploading them to SoundCloud just for like our friends and our housemates who like were actually at university or actually working. And we were like, haha, look what we did today. Isn't this so funny? That's how it started. And then we accidentally got booked for a gig, and then we had to find a drummer and a bassist and pretend we were a professional band.
Wow. That is amazing. And then we saw you, we were both at Manchester Punk Festival, and you were incredible. It was such a good gig. Was it for you?
Yeah, it was amazing. No, I loved it. We played a couple of years ago, we played at Breadshed at Manchester Punk Festival, which was also amazing. And then me and AJ, our drummer, went last year just as punters, just to see everyone, because we were like, oh my God, it was the best festival ever. And then, yeah, obviously we played this year. And I jokingly said, like, last year when I was there in 2023, I jokingly said to the MPF organisers, like, oh, we need to be here next year and we need to play main stage. And then I basically like demanded to be back there and demanded to play main stage, and they actually let us. And it was incredible.
I've always thought there's like a quite a tongue-in-cheek cheekiness to the Menstrual Cramps. Like, even though the songs are like, let's call the Tories, like there's a real humor to it, and I guess just talking about antagonistic, that like you are being the antagonists, the baddies, the problem queer punks that are going to like ruin the establishment's day, but you're gonna do it with a sly nod and a funny little reference here and there. Is that a deliberate thing, or does it just come together because you four you're having a laugh together?
I think it just sort of comes naturally to us. Like, we're all really, really good friends, and like all of the band members over the years, like we've had different band members come and go, but we've all been really good friends. And like, I think also we all spend like so much time together outside of band stuff as well as band stuff. So we do have these kind of like constant jokes, constant laughs together. And also I think that's important when we're talking about such serious things and horrible things like going on in the world, or things that we've experienced. Like, we have to have a bit of humor, otherwise like we wouldn't leave the house.
Well, I just ask about the EP that's come out, collection of 4 new songs. I suppose the banger from it is Class War for me. And I was
speaking of nuance, I mean, what do you mean by this is class war exactly? Could you expand on that?
This is class war! Stand up, we're survivors. Stand up, support the strikers. Stand up, we're survivors. Stand up, support the strikers. Shout out Mick Lynch, RMT, ASLEF, Unison, Unite, Royal College of Nursing, I've got your back. CWU, UCU, a store, everyone go and join a union.
Yeah, see, I think our lyrics are I'm not very good at writing metaphors.
No.
Like some people write all these like amazing like lyrics, all these like metaphors, and everyone's trying to work out what they all mean and like if there's secret meaning. I'm like, no,
yeah, fuck that.
It's literally, we do what we say on the tin. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not rocket science.
Just need to keep saying this.
Yeah, it was like, so that sort of like spoken bit that I do where I list all the unions and then I say that was just like an ad lib. Like we had the choruses and we had the verses, and then there was like this gap in the middle of the song. And like we were doing the demo, like sat at AJ's house flat, and we were like, and I don't know, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just list a bunch of unions and just say like, you know, UCU, CWU. And then there was like a joke in there, and then that was just like a filler until I was like, oh, and then I'll think of something else. But I can't think of anything else. And then it just sort of stuck like that. And I was like, well, now I've said it on the demo as a filler. I cannot possibly think of anything else that needs to be in that space.
It. Just getting to the point about something and saying it over and over and over and over again just feel like a menstrual cramp.
Well, yeah. I mean, the other song that makes me think of, because I had a listen for this chat is I've had abortion, I've had two. If you don't like it, then fuck you. Is that the right?
Yeah.
Had an abortion. Had an abortion, no, I've had two. If you don't like it, then fuck you.
Yeah, and with that song, that was literally the lyrics I had for the song. I was like, this is my fact of my life. This is true. And I was really annoyed, like arguing with family members about having two abortions. This was like during the Roe v. Wade stuff in America a few years ago. And then I basically posted a Facebook status telling everyone on Facebook that I'd had two abortions. And obviously I got a lot of backlash from family members and some friends. And I was angry about it. So then I just wrote that. And I was like, that's going to be a song. And then obviously like we ended up fleshing out some more like verses and stuff, but for ages the song was literally like 2 minutes long of just me saying that over and over again.
Yeah,
I love that that you started off doing spoken word with just an acoustic guitar, really stripped down, and a lot of the songs like do have this real like rawness that it just comes back down to just saying the thing that needs to be said. I guess on that, things that need to be said, the next thing we wanted to talk to you about was the Bands Boycott Barclays, because we're living in an era where not only is it things need to be said, things need to be done and affecting change. So
for anyone who doesn't know about Bands Boycott Barclays, can you give us a bit of context about the campaign?
So basically we got booked to play the Great Escape Festival in Brighton. And then it was after the South by Southwest stuff that happened in America, the boycotts over there. So I was looking into like sponsors of festivals, and I realized that Barclays was a partner of the Great Escape Festival. So I spoke to my friend Liv Winter, who's previously been on your podcast.
Yes, thank you. Everyone can check out the live Manchester Punk Festival podcast. Liv Winter is a guest.
And
not sponsored by Barclays.
No. And so I was talking to them about festival sponsors and stuff, and like how like I could go about doing something about this. So then like first of all, obviously we spoke to our label and said we're not going to play unless they drop their partnership with Barclays, so can you get hold of them and just tell them to drop Barclays and write a statement to why. And then there was like a few back and forth emails, and our label had some phone calls and meetings and stuff with them. And then after maybe like 10 days we realized like they're not going to do that basically. So then we sort of went public. I wrote a statement as Menstrual Cramps with help from Liv, and then basically started like the small campaign, just a few of us, a few friends that we know, like activists and musicians. I think about 165 acts in the end pulled out of the Great Escape. They joined the boycott along with like 2 venues, maybe 3 labels in the end, or 4 labels in the end.
Wow.
Showcases, and obviously separate artists, 165 of them. And then now in the run up, it was just before Download Festival, or I think it was the day that Download Festival started, actually, we got confirmation that all of Live Nation festivals in 2024 will no longer be partnered with Barclays.
I guess it's worth pointing out, if for listeners who don't know, Barclays invest billions in the arms industry, which is causing immeasurable harm to people across the world, but obviously, especially at the moment, the people of Palestine, and I believe also investment in fossil fuels. So there are a bunch of bad uns, basically. Yes. What really struck me as important about Great Escape to start with, but then obviously it spread to other festivals, is like, you don't have to be a shouty political punk band to like take a stance. And I've like gone through and listened to the playlists and some of the artists and discovered them, and it's like, yeah, like, even, you know, you just have to be human and care and have, you can have agency of like what gigs you play and what events you do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were sort of like, well, if we boycott this festival, we have to boycott all of Live Nation. Oh, but then we have to boycott Ticketmaster, and then we have to boycott anything in the O2 or any of these venues, and then you're basically asking the music industry to collapse, and then we might as well live in the woods. And it was like, look, these are like strategic things. Like the boycott target is not Live Nation, you know, the boycott target is Barclays. Like Live Nation, you might not want to work with them as a musician for lots of other reasons. But that's not the ask of us, because the ask of us is specifically to do with what's happening in Palestine right now. And that's what we're fighting for, and that's what we're raising awareness for. So, you know, the BDS target isn't Live Nation, because Live Nation aren't the ones that are specifically funding the genocide that's happening in Palestine, whereas Barclays are, and you can see that, and there's research that has been done where you can see the money they're putting into it and all the different companies and all the money they're investing. So, you know, it was very strategic, and I think maybe I went into it quite naively because of being in the punk scene and being an activist for quite a long time, of just like, oh, this is an easy option for me because I already sort of like knew about it and understood. And do you know what I mean? But for other people, like, they didn't understand what a boycott was, or what that really meant about the strategy or the tactics, and what that meant for them as an artist, and maybe for their career, you know. And people were scared, musicians were scared to not just be surrounded by punk musicians talking about this stuff. Like, we've made some good friends, and, you know, like what you're saying about the playlists and stuff that we made, like, I listen to loads of those bands now that I never would have, you know, experienced or listened to or ever been around them in the punk
scene. Some of my best friends play pop music.
Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? It's so lovely. Like, it's really nice to like open my eyes to everyone else, expand everyone's horizons. Yeah, it was really, really lovely.
Amazing.
Well, on that note, it'd be lovely to hear a piece of music you'd like to recommend for the Vandal Factory podcast. So what track would you like us to play after this interview?
I'm going to choose someone who joined the boycott with us from like day one. And the band is called Moizu, which is Muizyu. She's currently on tour with Bat for Lashes. I just went and saw her in Bristol play with Bat for Lashes. She's incredible, really different. It's not punk music at all, but I love it. And yeah, she was one of the first people to boycott, and she's got a whole new album out. I would like to pick Everything to Die For.
Try to say sorry if you don't mean it. You might regret it. You lie but wait for me, but you don't mean it. Pretend your secret is my secret. We've got everything someone somewhere is kind enough for me. Promise to be there. Turn insides into outsides for you. We've got everything I die for, everything I die for. So try to hang on, and thank God if you want to. Everything I die for, and everything I die for. Thank God if I want to. Thank God for you.
Thank you so much to Emilia. I loved that chat. And even more, I love the Menstrual Cramps. So thank you. Thank you for existing.
If you want to hear more chats with cool punk musicians, check out episode number 7, where we interviewed Petrol Girls. But now it's time to say goodbye.
It's time to say goodbye. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to us. It really means a lot. It is just me and Natalie. We don't have any funding or sponsorship, so it means the world to us that you've taken time to check out this episode of the Vandal Factory podcast. Listen, find us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, and Instagram.
And please spread the word and let us know if you've listened. We know that you're listening, but please drop us a comment. Like, we love to know what you love and what don't you love. When do you get bored? And, you know, feedback is really, really useful.
This episode was recorded at Chapel FM Art Centre in their radio studios, so we just want to give a shout out and say thank you to them for their support and lending us their resources. Cheers very much.
We also have a Patreon, so if anyone out there actually has any money and wants to give it to us, you can go to Patreon and subscribe, and that would be really helpful.
It really helps us if you leave a 5-star review. Like, it generally does help us with the stats, and people look at it and go, that sounds really good. And also, we have a playlist of all the music we play, which is on Spotify if you search for Vandal Factory playlist. Natalie, what's that on the floor? Is that your guard?
No!
I told you not to let your guard down.
Don't let your guard down.
Don't let your guard down.
Before we do that, we've got my banger of the hour.
Because every single song you own is a banger.
It's time for Nat's banger of the hour.
Bangers.
Is it a banger?
So we are going to finish on this. It is an absolute banger. It's called No Pride by a band that, like, you've just sent me this week. I've not heard of them before.
I literally heard this track last night, but they are playing Greenbelt Festival.
They are playing Greenbelt Festival, and who else is, Henry?
On that very same stage, the Rebel Rouser stage! We are doing a live episode of the Vandal Factory show, so if you're at Greenbelt, come along. Check us out at 12:30 on the Sunday. We'll have special guests, special features, and then, of course, that'll be up on all your lovely websites and apps and podcast sites. So please subscribe. Do it now. Click subscribe.
But anyway, look, this is my banger of the hour moment. I was about to tell you about this band. I've got one of my favourite names for a band ever, and they are called Daffodildos. Daffodildos sound amazing, and this is their song, No Pride.
Hi, it's Emily from Daffodildos. I wrote No Pride on a London bus during Pride Month, you know, and I was seeing all the shops and the banks with their rainbows and the police cars, and I just got me thinking, like, what has all this got to do with Pride? Like, they're not gonna be there for us after June. So yeah, I started writing the song, and it just came very naturally. And then I performed it the very next day at Pride in London. And now I get to play it with my band Daffodildos. And I hope you enjoy it.